And David Sussman is joining us once again here on Connecting America, former IDF soldier, host of a popular TV show in Israel, and also an Israeli tour guide. David, thanks for being here once again. How closely, where you are inside Israel, are Israelis watching what's happening at this summit, do you think?
I think, well, first of all, thank you for having me on the show again. But for your question, I think Israelis right now are probably focused more on the campaign in Gaza City than they are at the Arab summit happening in Doha. And the reason behind that is if you look historically, the Arab nations here in the Middle East have been fragmented due to mistrust towards one another, ideological oppositions towards one another, whether it's the Shiite Sunni split in Islam. And that oftentimes, when there are meetings with all of the Arab nations coming together, or a bunch of them, they leave with more disagreements than they do actual agreements. The fact that Qatar is hosting Iran. I mean, Iran also attacked in Qatar during the war with Israel in June of this summer. So you can see a lot of interesting players that are at that summit, and also Qatar itself. I mean, Qatar has been housing these Hamas leaders for well over a decade now, has been one of the major financiers of Hamas, and allowed them to host, having media presentations within Doha. And if you look at the leaders themselves, I mean, they're all sitting pretty there with billions of dollars in their bank accounts. So when you see what Qatar is up to, who they're financing, who they're hosting, Iran, one of them, you can see that there's a lot of double standards within Qatar itself.
I've got a question. No nation or group of people is a monolith. There's always a variety of opinions. How would you describe the different ways the Israeli people are looking at this conflict? How united are they in the viewpoint, or what are the differing views?
Sure. I think overall, like, one of the major differences, at least here in the Middle East, right? When you think of the Middle East, you think of the Arab countries and you think of Israel. You think of the one democracy here in the Middle East and everyone else who is maybe at best partly free. And I mean, freedom of press, freedom of voting, having rights across all the citizens there. And here in Israel, we enter into this battle that's being fought with more clarity and with unity. The differences that lie within the matter of opinions here is with the government, with Bibi Netanyahu. So a lot of times people who are anti-Bibi Netanyahu or want this government out of power will sort of bring together the war in Gaza with that idea. But I think even those who are opposed to Bibi Netanyahu and the way he's going about this war still find it necessary that we eliminate Hamas, that we bring the hostages home, and that we bring peace to the borders of Israel, hopefully for generations to come. And I think if we have peace here in Israel, there'll be broader ramifications around the world for that as well.
We had an Arab journalist on earlier, specifically Egyptian, Egypt, of course, lying to the south of Gaza. What role do you think Arab nations can play with Gazans and their safety? Because she was reflecting frustration that her own government weren't letting Gazans cross the border into potential safety into Egypt.
Yeah, I'm glad that you mentioned that. A lot of people don't realize that, Gaza has a border with Egypt, right? It's not only Israel, there's also a border there with Egypt. And Egypt has a much larger barrier, fortification, wall that separates Gaza from Egypt, preventing anybody who's fleeing for safety to be able to go into what's really a barren land. We're talking about the Sinai Peninsula. We're not talking about Egypt proper, if we want to, over across the Suez Canal. But if you're looking at the Sinai Peninsula, I mean, it's a very arid land that could easily build some type of area where the people of Gaza could be safe during this conflict that Israel is engaging with Hamas. Why they refuse to do that, I really have no idea. And I'm happy to see that there's an Egyptian journalist who's actually speaking out against their government and saying, why are we not doing more? Because that is a great question. Why are they not doing more? For the future of Gaza, I think Egypt will play a role. I would hope that Saudi Arabia and the other Arab nations want to play a role with Israel, with the United States, in order to put boots on the ground, in order that there should be security within the Gaza Strip, so that when the third, fourth, fifth round of billions of dollars that will be donated to the Arabs living there, that it won't go to building more terror tunnels and an infrastructure that is there to serve for the annihilation of Israel, and that hopefully it will be used towards building hospitals, schools, bridges, and prosper peace with its neighbors, Israel. Myself.
David, any thoughts on what Israel needs to do to perhaps win back support from world leaders who are concerned that this conflict is affecting Gazans who are not aligned with Hamas, non-terrorists, but fomenting a hatred against Israel for the humanitarian suffering that they're dealing with?
Yeah, that's a very complex question. I think a lot of it has to do with the media. I think a lot of it has to do with the education. I think people don't realize how evil Hamas is. I don't think people realize how much oppression the people of Gaza have been living with over the last 20 years that Hamas has been in rule. It is not a free place. You have very limited rights in Gaza. So obviously there's people there that don't want Hamas in power. I wish they would have stood up to Hamas in 2007 when they had that terrible coup over the Palestinian Authority. And I wish they stood up earlier and prevented Hamas from waging this war. However, when you do look at like the United Nations, I mean, even the Human Rights Council within the United Nations, out of the 47 members that are on it, only 14 of them are actually free democratic societies. And there seems to be a hyper focus on Israel. I mean, an overwhelming majority of all of their resolutions are against Israel. Even all the other nations combined, Israel still has over 50% of all those resolutions that the UN Human Rights Council has issued. So, I think it really comes down to a core focus of looking at Israel as a free democratic society, as a Western satellite here in the Middle East, as a place of shared values, and to realize that we do have a common threat called radical Islam, fundamental Islamists, jihadists, whatever name you want to use for it, that have this vision of Pan-Arabia and really having the world, but having as much of as possible of the world submitting to the will of Islam. I mean, that is part of the Hamas charter. I mean, anybody can look it up online, do a little bit of research, look at the Hamas charter. That's what they want. So I think it really comes to everybody saying, let's take a step back. Let's not look at what we're trying to do for ourselves in this moment, but look at the broader picture for the generations to come and see who the true enemy is. It's not Israel.
David Sussman, thanks for joining us
Yeah,
once
thank you.
again from Efrat in Israel.